Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of The Family Business where we discuss how family and careers are intertwined. It's my pleasure to introduce you all to Kamal Bhandal. Kamal and I go back quite some time, and she is exceptional at what she does, and would love for you guys all to get to know her. Kamal, thanks for coming on.
Hi, Matt. Thanks
Hey,
for having me today.
nah, I'm glad to do it. So, wanted to start with giving you about a minute to just explain. Look, this is where I'm at these days. This is kind of a snapshot of me, and then we can delve into some of the history about you that's so fascinating.
Awesome. Well, it's good to connect with you today. We've known each other for a long time, Matt, so it's awesome to see you. I am currently in the professional side of my life over at Align Technology, where I've been for the last 7 years or so, consistent with where I've been over time, which is in the med tech space at a company that is at the intersection of technology, healthcare. We've got a B2B side to our business as well as a B2C side as well, or B to B to C, I should say.
Yep.
So I am enjoying myself in leading all of the global consumer brand and consumer efforts over at Align.
I mean, Align has taken off like nothing I've really ever seen before. I mean, I think there's 3 or 4 people in my office alone, including my wife at home, who also uses your system.
That's awesome. Well, we thank you and your family for trusting your smiles to the Invisalign brand. That's what we're best known for.
No, the results have been
And
great. I mean, phenomenal results.
fantastic. I thank them for trusting us with their smiles. That's what we do.
So let's unpack that a bit because that's such a personal item. You know, someone's smile is their business card. I think I read that somewhere. Um, was that what drew you in to go to the company in the first place? Because I remember Align years ago was not obviously this big, and it was a bit of a unique situation. What was the impetus in starting there?
Well, I think a couple of things. I always take a look at joining companies who have innovative technology, have a fantastic brand, and also have both a healthcare professional component to the business as well as a consumer component to the business. And really, the business at Align is one where everything happens at the doctor's office and really helping consumers become more aware of how they could improve their smiles with a digital solution, with leading technology, was really what helped me make the decision to pivot from where I was and join Align Tech. What's important to me is really making sure that what I do day in and day out has a purpose. And at Align, our purpose couldn't be a better purpose. And that is, we're in the business of transforming smiles and changing lives. That's about as great as it gets when it comes to how I spend my time or how I could be spending my time day in and day out. So it was a no brainer for me.
Yeah, I mean it's done so well. I'm curious, do most of the employees have good teeth?
I'll say this. I think one of the benefits of working in the teeth straightening industry is that all of a sudden you do get really focused in on your own teeth and your own smile. And at some point or another, I think a lot of people do choose to have Invisalign treatment if they haven't already. I
Must be.
wouldn't say everybody, but I'd say a lot of us do choose to do that. I am an Invisalign user as well.
Yeah.
I had braces as a kid and am one of the many people who did not do a good job of wearing my retainer. And so
Yeah,
I
I
was
lost mine on
fortunate
the way
enough to
home.
try it.
Yeah, I never wore mine even for a minute. I mean, I got lucky that I didn't have them shift. So, refresh my memory. You've got I forget how old your child is.
So I have two
That's
kids
right, you
now,
have two.
actually. And what's awesome is I have two girls, one who is 13. So I'm living the world of Gen Z and all things that come along with a teenager. And then I also have a 10-year-old daughter as well, who's part of the next generation, Gen Alpha. And so I've got real life focus groups in my household day in and day out, every single day of the week. So it's exciting.
Is there a lot of TikTok going on there?
A lot of TikTok.
Yeah. Oh,
And what I will say is there's been a lot of TikTok during this pandemic as we've all been at home.
yeah.
So that's certainly been a platform that has had its moment, or is having its moment, is probably the better way to say it. And I've gotten a lot of practice on it. So it's good.
Are you on it? Have you done a dance with your girls and put something out?
Definitely. No
Good
better
for
way to
you.
dive in to the world of social media than to try it yourself.
I have not, and my son's a bit of a comedian, and I know that he dabbles in it, but I don't think he's putting anything out. But I've been trying to convince him to do something because he's really a bit of a character. He he does impersonations, and then every country sounds the same. It's so awful, it's hysterical. And I've been
That sounds
trying to
like a
get him to
challenge,
do it.
Matt.
Yeah, he's a trip. So that's the interesting thing. One of the things that I was thinking about you I was talking about potentially doing this with you and getting this scheduled was that you have a unique perspective. Your social media and your digital marketing background is strong as anybody that I know. How does that affect you at home where you have to shut it off and your girls will say, "Well, you're on your phone. You're on social media." I'm like, "Well, yeah, well that's work." So, and I'm wondering how you deal with that.
Well, I'm glad you asked. It is definitely not an easy task to create those boundaries, and I do get that comment all the time from both Rena and Mira, my two girls. And one of the things that I'll say is that, truthfully, I probably have a really hard time with it. I think it's interesting because I do try every platform. I am active in every platform, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Snap, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram. And the reason for that is as a marketer, it's important that I understand natively how to use each of the channels, and also understand the strengths, the weaknesses of each one. And I'll say that what's been exciting though is having that connection with my kids. And so often, both of them are teaching me, and they'll be introducing me to how I can navigate the platforms more easily, more readily, different tips and tricks. And so, if anything, I'll say it's been an area of connection for us in such a way where we're connected online. I can see what they're doing in social. They can see what I'm doing in the social space as well. And they teach me all of their tips and tricks so that I can ensure that I'm staying at the top of my game as well.
They're consultants for you. That's
They're
really funny.
consultants, exactly.
That's crazy. I never thought of it that way. I thought you were going to give me a different answer. So, what are some of the things they've taught you?
Well, I would say first things first, many years ago, when the whole aspect of both a Finsta and
Yeah.
your real Instagram was coming out and was a thing. I was the first to know about it, not from my work perspective, but really at the home front, and really understand what that world was about. That's one. The world of TikTok has been an obvious one. I would say, I really saw that flourish at home in real time with both my girls and their friends, and really understanding the ins and outs of Snapchat. I mean, I think that, exploring different filters, playing with different lenses, it's been a good opportunity for us to connect, and for me to understand the platforms at a deeper level than I think I would if I didn't have that connection. So it's been great, honestly.
Now, do you think, I don't mean to get so philosophical, but do you think that you're more protective because you understand what comes along with social media, especially for young kids and teenagers and everything that they're doing today with it, some of it good, some of it not so great, or are you able to be more understanding because you live in that world and you understand, look, it's not all bad. It's fine. Just here are your limits.
It's more the latter for sure. And I'd say because I live in the world, I can understand and appreciate what actually happens inside of social media, and be aware of all the different accounts that could exist, and be able to set some boundaries. And I think that, that's really been one of the conversations that's been alive and well in our household between my husband Mick and I, in that, he doesn't live in this world. And as social media is very much the lifeline for teens right now, especially. I think it's driven me to understand the space a little bit more, be able to have a much more open conversation with my daughters about it. And also, likewise, I mean, they know that I know this space as well. And I think, if anything, it's helped balance those conversations out on the home front, for sure.
It's tough. I am not savvy. My wife is, and so I'm probably like your husband coming in and going, what are you guys doing? Why are you
Mm-hmm.
doing that? And
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten better at it because I felt like I needed to be more conversant in it. But the truth of it is, some of the things that they're doing and some of the things that they've told me, I'm like, kids are doing that? They're sending each
Mm-hmm.
other what?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing. And my daughter's 16, so it's fairly advanced, some of the stuff, and you just kind of have to walk away quietly because I don't even know where to go with
Right.
that.
And I think that one of the areas that we've really focused on, in living in the social world, has been having that direct conversation up front with my daughters up front, and basically saying, look, here's the responsibility that comes with being in the social space, right? Here's what you have to be aware of. Here are the guardrails. We're open, of course, to enabling you to have these accounts. I want to have an open dialogue about it, but here are just the rules of the game that you need to be aware of, and here's why the rules of the game are what they are. That was a critical part of our conversation.
Now, do you use the same sentence that we use at home, which is the internet is forever?
Yes,
Yeah.
the internet is forever. Screenshots are forever. The world is very much a global world, and nothing is private.
Yeah, no doubt. So, what are they into outside of school?
So Mira's actually in swimming. So she's my little one. She's in swimming, and she's got a swim team starting tomorrow. So we're excited about that. And Rena actually had been in horseback riding for a long
Really?
time. Yeah, so she was very passionate about horseback riding. She's on hiatus right now because of a knee injury, but that was her thing for a long time.
Yeah, I live in a horse community, and there's an equestrian
Oh,
center right around the corner. And my wife and I had agreed quietly, without the kids knowing, that we're just steering them away from that. And the last time we went riding, my son's horse bit my wife's horse, and my son said, "Yeah, I'm done with this." I'm not. It's a whole long story that's pretty funny actually, but his horse is tiny because he's a little guy, and his horse came at my wife's horse and bit it right on the neck. And everybody's
wow.
yelling, and the horses are all going nuts. I'm like, I'm in a western, in the middle of this. Yeah, it was at Disney World too. Yeah,
Wow.
it was
So
it was bananas.
why steer them away from it?
Well, yeah, not to put this on you, but we saw some injuries
Mm.
in the neighborhood, and I mean, look, it's certainly an expensive a hobby. Not that that's the deterrent. I mean, every hobby is expensive these days, pretty much. But yeah, I was more the injuries. I was concerned about that. In soccer, someone knocks you down 9 times out of 10, you get up. You fall off a horse. I don't think it's 9 out of 10. And so,
Yeah,
so yeah, that was my main hesitation because my daughter definitely liked them. I'm like, yeah, let's find something else.
that's the balance for sure. I hear you on that. I think, the first time Rena fell off of a horse, it was a hold your breath moment for sure. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah, look, yeah, we all make choices. I do things that most people go, "You let your kids do." I'm like, "Yeah, sure do,"
Hmm.
and they just stare at me. So I think we all have our items. Now, um, one of the things that I always wondered about you is you had a career going at Sun Microsystems that you were clearly on the technical side, and you could have grown that and done just as well as you're doing now. What prompted the change to healthcare at that point?
It's such a good question, and I remember that part of my career really well. So I kind of grew up in tech early on, and I was first at Intel on the hardware side of the house in global roles, then moved over to Sun in the software side. The very, very early days of enterprise computing and cloud computing, all these different terms that are such a regular part of our vernacular. And I was at a moment where I was having a great time in tech, certainly enjoyed it, but very much got to a place where I wanted to try something new and felt as though I was at that time in my career where if I didn't try it, I thought it might get just harder and harder. All of my early career was spent on the B2B side. And one of the areas that I was very curious about that I wanted to try was the consumer space. And I still knew that I wanted tech to be a core part of what I focused on as a consumer marketer, if I liked consumer marketing. And so I started to poke around at different opportunities here in the Bay Area and was fortunate enough that Johnson & Johnson had LifeScan, its diabetes division here in the Bay, and it was the perfect opportunity. It had a consumer element to it. I was able to really walk in and learn consumer from the ground up, I would say. It had a technology aspect to it. It was kind of a good opportunity in that it blended both my hardware and my software skills because it was med device. And I think what was really interesting about that is it gave me the opportunity to explore consumer at the ground level, still in a tech space, leveraging all of the skills that I had learned over at Intel and Sun, but learning a brand new space. And really what I decided was I thought, like a lot of people, I'll give it a year, I'll see how it goes. If I don't like consumer and if I don't like healthcare, I can always go back to hardware or software. And the reality is what happened is Johnson & Johnson was a great organization for me. I fell in love with consumer marketing, very much fell in love with healthcare as well, and having that higher order purpose became a core part of what I value day in and day out as a marketer. And so that was the start of my journey in med tech and in healthcare, and I've never looked back.
No, I mean, everything you've done has been, I wouldn't say you've stayed in your own lane, but you definitely are more consumer driven than most people that I speak with. If you consider diabetes, IVF, and now Align, I mean, it seems like you've really found an area of strength for you where you bring just a ton of value, and obviously you enjoy it or you wouldn't be doing it for 7 years.
I love it. You're
Yeah.
right. I do love it. And I think what's been great about all of these different companies, right? Johnson & Johnson, the IVF startup that I was at for a bit, as well as Align, is each one of these companies had a purpose, right? And they were purpose-driven brands, very much focused in helping people live their lives in a different way, right? Whatever that purpose was for the respective organization. And I think for me, the consumer side of the house has been particularly interesting and fun because the innovation is there. Consumer marketing, the landscape is changing day in and day out. We talked about Gen Z earlier with my kids, and they certainly are demanding a lot more from brands than any other consumer has. And I think it's a space that's continuing to innovate, it's continuing to evolve. And what's exciting as a marketer is that you're always still learning, right? It always keeps you on your toes and gives you a new area to learn about no matter how long you've been in the space.
Oh, but that's an interesting point that you make because that's something about you and folks who have your responsibilities have to deal with is AdvaMed and the legal side and making sure that you're not posting anything or allowing anything to be posted that's misleading or damaging even. So your job must be so unique in that way. You have to be this creative person, but also be somewhat restrictive.
Yeah, it's a good point, and that's a reality that all of us in healthcare marketing have to face day in and day out. And I think there's a responsibility to it, right, as marketers. And when you think about it, you don't ever want to mislead a consumer. And I think the responsibility that we all have is to ensure that we market the brands that we represent in the best possible way that we can, and also ensure that that we are aware of the regulations and work with our partners throughout the organization who help us stay educated on what those regulations are. And if anything, what I always say is the more constraints you have, the more innovative I think sometimes it pushes us to be,
That's a good
so that
perspective.
it's not like, you know, you've got all the resources, you've got all of the information, you've got all of the latitude that you could want, but I think it's all part of figuring out how to assemble that puzzle to do what's right for the brand, to do what's right for the business, and to do what's right for the consumer ultimately.
Hmm. Now, you'd mentioned that Mick was at the hospital last time we were emailing back and forth. Is he a physician?
He's a pharmacist,
Oh,
so he
it's
works
funny.
over
I didn't know.
at Stanford here, yeah, the Children's Hospital.
It's interesting to me, and my kids were just asking me about this because one of my son's friends' mothers is a chief pharmacist at a big hospital group, and she's one of the smartest people that I know. And he didn't realize like how much it took to become that person. I'm like, bud, I don't think there's a harder education track than that. Maybe to become like an actuary and that kind of mathematics, I suppose. But outside of that, I can't think of anything more difficult. I mean, how long did it take him to become that? A PharmD takes what, 10 years?
It's 4 years post graduate school. Now, sorry, it's 4 years post undergraduate, I should
Right.
say. Now, he became a PharmD later in life. So what a lot of people do is they'll go to their undergrad and then they'll go straight into some type of pharmacy program, whether it's a PharmD or other programs. But what he did is he had a career in biotech. So interestingly enough, you know, at some point when I switched over from tech into medical device, I met Mick, and Mick was in biotech, and he was working at a little startup here in the Valley. And he kind of also got to that point in his career where he started to ask what's next. And as he was figuring out, you know, what's next, we were also thinking about starting a family. And so we had all these parameters that we were trying to figure out and juggle, as many people do, which is how do you have two careers, one person possibly going back to school full time, still have kids, and ultimately, you know, with chemistry at his core and math and science at his core, he settled on pharmacy being an area that he wanted to focus on. And so he went off to pharmacy school full time at UCSF. I was at J&J, and we started our family with all of this going on in the mix. We actually had Rena at the start of pharmacy school, and we had Mira, our younger one, at the end of pharmacy school. And throughout all of that, we've been able to make it all work somehow.
That's a heavy load. I'm
Yeah,
glad I
you
asked because I didn't know what he did, and that always amazes me that people have this tendency to be like, yeah, that's just what we did. Do you understand that 1% of the 1% can do that? The rest can't, and that's just because I know what goes into that program, the amount of work that he had to put in, and with the child. I mean, did you guys ever sleep those first couple of years?
not a whole lot,
No, I
truth
wouldn't
be
think so.
told, right? Not a whole lot. What I will say, and I was sharing this with someone today on my team, in that it takes a village, right? And I think that I've always grown up with that type of family structure where the assumption is that it does take a village to raise a family, to have a career, and you should embrace that, right? So for me, it was very innate in terms of how I approach things, and it was a natural part of my approach, and for Mick as well. And so we didn't sleep a lot. I will say we had help along the way, a lot of help along the way. And I also say that it takes both parents fully engaged to make it all work. And that's what we did. You know, we both prioritized what was important to us at the time. I still had my career full time. He was going to school full time, and in some ways, it gave us some flexibility during critical parts of my career as well. Where as a student, He had a lot more flexibility, albeit it was very rigorous, of course,
I was
at
gonna say.
UCSF, but it was, he had a lot of flexibility. And while Rena was young, that flexibility helped us. And it certainly aided my career with him as a partner having that flexibility at home. And here we are. So we made it all work somehow.
Yeah. So, what is it like for your girls looking at their mom and their dad? They're so well educated. You guys are accomplished folks. You clearly are tops of your field. And do they take an interest in healthcare because that's so pervasive in your house, or are they like, look, I'd rather be a veterinarian and take care of horses?
Uh, it's a good question. It's interesting. I would say that Rena is definitely interested in healthcare, right? And I think each kid is a little bit different. Rena's got healthcare written all over her. She's interested in all of the biology. She's interested in all of the bones and how different parts of your body and the different health systems all work together. And Mira's a bit more entrepreneurial, right? She's got that I'm going to start a business bug in her body, and she's much more business oriented. And in everything that she does, whether it's her simple lemonade stand, back in the day when she had her first lemonade stand and iterating, my word, not hers, but finding ways to improve that lemonade stand so that she'd get more customers. I definitely think there's a business bone in her body, and Rena's the one that's much more interested in the science side.
So it's interesting. It's such a fine line when you're a parent to not push, because you
Yeah.
see them have an interest and you see them have an aptitude, and you're like, all right, I am agonizing with. I want to tell them everything, and it's better to do it, in more of a measured approach and let them kind of come to you. You have so much, and obviously Mick does too, so much information to give them both. Like, how do you? What's the cadence, I guess, you use in giving them some insight? And look, this is kind of what mom does all day, and this is how the sausage is made.
Well, I'll say this pandemic certainly has been a lens and a window into my world more so than I think they've ever had. And it's been great, right? I mean, they are sitting in the other room, zooming into their own classes. I'm sitting in one of our bedrooms, talking to you. And throughout this pandemic, over the last 7 months or so, since we've been all at home, they've really gotten much more of a window into my day-to-day life and how the sausage has been made. And so, I think they have a different level of appreciation for what it takes to get something done, whether it's, how do you work with an influencer, or what does a regular day in the life for mom sound like. They've got a better appreciation for that now than they ever did before. I think what's hard is that balance that you spoke about, Matt, which is, you have so much information you want to give them, but you have to not push. You have to let them learn on their own and internalize both their successes as well as their failures. And that's probably the hardest thing to watch, which is when they're going down a path that's not going to turn out well. And we're talking about little micro moments in their lives that don't really matter, but the lessons from those, I think, are so important. I'll take the lemonade stand as an example. Mira's lemonade stand, when she's setting up her lemonade stand, and this is in a pre-COVID world, and that there's no customer that's going to walk down the street and she's going to sit there all day. You kind of just have to let it happen and let her learn that so she can figure out what to do next time.
Yeah, that's interesting because I've learned that over the years, and I've let them fall. I've let them almost hurt themselves a little bit in different things physically. That I was like, all right, you want to jump off of that particular slide? Just understand you're a lot higher than you think, and different things like that. And my wife just walks away in horror because I'm a believer in you got to touch a hot stove to understand what it means when I tell you it's hot.
Yes.
And that's just the way I've always looked at it. Now, you mentioned something that triggered something in my mind. So, with your kids being the age they are, and they're social media savvy, and then you tell them, hey, look, I'm in touch with some influencer or some person they probably have heard of. Like, how does that go? Do they want to meet them? Do they want to hear about them? Or do they really not care about the details of some of that?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that, part of it is there's a lot of the influencer world that actually unfolds in my living room as I think about really just internalizing the impact influencers have on their generation and seeing that firsthand. That's one piece of it that has been really insightful for me. On their side of the house, it's a little bit of a, okay, that's interesting. I think for them, their world is so multifaceted and so multidimensional. While they see different influencers in their screens, they are, of course, influenced and persuaded by them in so many ways. They kind of just see it as work for me, and they don't really care to dive into the details at a greater level. So it's been an interesting thing to watch.
Because you work with that teen segment,
We
don't you?
do.
Yeah. And so I would think it'd be
Absolutely.
people that they probably have heard of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think the thing that unfolds most regularly is they will be on their phones and in their social feeds seeing different brands market
Hmm.
to them. And what's interesting and what they pay attention to is really who's popping up in their feed, who's marketing to them. And I think what is good about me being in the field that I'm in and them being at the age that they're at is they can really identify when they are being marketed to very overtly, and they'll let me know, mom, here's what I thought was really irritating, or
Great.
here's what I figured out later was actually marketing, but it was really cool when it was happening and I didn't mind it at all. And so having that perspective in real time is quite helpful.
Do you do that? Do you stop what you're doing before you post it or before you approve it and bring one of the girls in and say, hey, is this irritating to you? Is this funny? Is this someone that you think would make you want to try a line? Or do you not like use them as a focus group?
Not so much. I think not so much. I think there's definitely things that they see once it's actually out in the marketplace and they'll say, "Oh, hey, I really liked that." But it's interesting in so many ways we keep that line quite separated between my specific brand that I'm working on versus what they may think about it. What's more fluid is just the media channels and the space and what Gen Z culture is like or what Gen Alpha culture is like. That's much more a part of the focus of their conversations with me.
Do they want to wear the Align system?
So they are both in Invisalign. Yep.
Awesome.
Mira, my little one, she started Invisalign when she was 8. And so that was super exciting. We worked with her orthodontist who evaluated her, of course, and looked at what her needs were and then started her on Invisalign when the time was right.
Yeah, so I'm guessing by what's behind you that this is her room.
This is her room. Yes.
She's
This
very
is her
good.
room full of butterflies and purpleness and all that good stuff.
And she colors in the lines too.
Colors and the lines. At least that's what makes it to the walls.
Is that a Disney princess? What's back there?
Probably. It's probably nope, not a Disney princess. Just some coloring. Just some
She gonna be
coloring.
horrified when she sees this.
Probably.
Why'd you do it in
Yeah.
my
She,
room?
she's not really quite sure what happens in her room throughout the day whenever I use it. So that's the other interesting part, right? We've got all three of us on Zoom in the household throughout the day, and so as we try to change things up regularly, we rotate different rooms that we're in just so we
That's
can give
clever.
ourselves a little bit of variety now that we're going on month 7 or so at home.
And how is that received? Do they
Great.
want to do it or do they
Everyone
give you a
loves it.
pain? Yeah? Oh,
Everyone loves it.
it's a pretty good
Every
idea.
so often you get a surprise. I might be walking by and her Mira's fourth grade class might see me, and every so often Mira or Rena will walk by in the background. So It's all working out so well. The first couple of months definitely took some adjustment, truth be told.
Yeah, I think that one of the wonderful byproducts of all of this is the humanization of everyone seeing what's going on behind your door at
Mm-hmm.
home. You know, it's just you find some way to relate because now you're seeing it. No one's telling you how picture perfect their life is because you only see their pictures at work, or they tell you a story, but it's not really what's happening. And instead, you see the dog run by, and somebody's yelling in the background, and you know, it just it makes it so much more comfortable, at least to me. I don't know if that's the way you found it, but I found it to be fantastic in that if there's any silver lining in all of this, it's that everyone seems to be a bit more understanding of everyone else's situation.
I agree. And I also think, to build on what you just said there, Matt, what it's really done, as you said, is it's humanized all of us in a way that wasn't there before. You know, when you think about office life, so to speak, it's all very much a curated experience, right? And it's a curated view of what you see and what you don't see. And so much of the goodness, I think, that has um, come out of this world that we're in with the pandemic is it has humanized everyone. You do get a glimpse into everyone's personal life. I mean, I had no qualms at all about joining this call with you today from my daughter's bedroom, because I think that it's important that you see this element and that marketers see this element of who I am, in such a way that, you know, otherwise you wouldn't be able to see in a world that was pre-COVID. And so when I think about some of the things that I hope we all retain in a post-pandemic world, whenever that may be, it's that connection that we've been able to make at a much deeper level with one another, with each of our colleagues, than perhaps was there before.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the concern that people will just revert back to form and say, look,
Mm-hmm.
this is what I'm comfortable with. But I think now, in some respects, there's no going back. You know, I don't think there's going to be this snap back to everyone's going to go to the office every day, and everyone's going to have to hire somebody with a handshake first, and everyone's
Mm-hmm.
going to have to work locally. You know, I can't work remotely, you know, in another state. Well, clearly we can, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
it's working fine. You know, we're productive and successful, and it seems like happy outside of obviously the illness part of this, but the rest of it, people seem to be enjoying it. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see. We'll see. Well, look, I had a feeling you were going to be fascinating, and I wasn't wrong for a change. Is there anything that I've missed? Is there any stories or anything that you would share about your career and your family and some of the choices that you've made?
I think the last thing that I'll just say is, you know, we've talked about my career, we've talked about my family, and what I just always say to everyone is it does take a village to make it all work, and be receptive to engaging your village, whoever that may be along the way, because you can make it all work, and you should be very unapologetic about whatever your goals are and that what you want to achieve, and then figure out how you orchestrate the support around you to enable that to happen. You know,
Yeah,
I think that's super important for people to hear.
it all starts from communication.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to speak up and then listen to when someone else responds, because I think that's part of the challenge is people want to talk but they don't want to hear what their response is. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And you know, the village piece, I've seen it in almost every family that I'm close with, and that's the way that it goes. Well, look, I cannot thank you enough. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. Everyone, this has been Kamal Bhandal on the family business where family was what binds us. And I look forward to showing you this later.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me today, Matt.
You bet.
Bye.
Talk soon.